Despite entering a plea, Boosie was recently found guilty of possessing a firearm, and it feels like there's no turning back for the first time. However, the most stunning aspect of the sentence isn't the sentence itself. Boosie claims that the system is framing
the system.
The fact that I was sentenced to third offense marijuana, 10 years. I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me down.
Some claim that this is all related to his victory in his death row case. Let me explain. When keeping it real goes awry, the hood is in shock, the streets are bustling, and hip-hop has lost one of its most devoted members. Torrance Ivy Hatch Jr., popularly known as Boosie Batas, recently accepted a plea that may have meant his permanent departure from the game. It's just a plea that I'm doing on August 26. However, in order to truly grasp how we got here, we must return to the beginning. When young Torrance first picked up the microphone and began spitting bars about the battle, it was in the dirty streets of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Boosie has had multiple run-ins with the law throughout his legal career, and in ways he never could have predicted, that criminal record would come back to haunt him. Back in 2008, what should have been just another day in the neighborhood became the start of a nightmare that is still going strong, laying the groundwork for all of this turmoil. When East Baton Rouge sheriff's officers discovered marijuana and a Glock handgun in Boosie's car on October 22, 2008, they took him into custody. Being busted in possession of marijuana is nothing new, as any street guy knows.
Yeah.
Now, how long have you been fighting this thing from the very, very beginning?
I've been fighting for probably 3 years now, probably.
3 years.
However, the fact that this was Boosie's third marijuana-related incident made all the difference in how the system was going to railroad him. The prison industrial complex, which has been crushing black men for generations, caught up with the young artist who was just beginning to make waves in the dirty South hip-hop scene. On September 22, 2009, Boosie entered a guilty plea to the charge of third offense marijuana possession. He was first struck with a 2-year bid by Judge Chip Moore, which led to some straight-up court action. However, on November 9, 2009, the judge doubled it to 4 years after learning that Boosie had broken his house arrest between the plea and sentencing.
Now, it was a state case. The feds came, picked it up. They had a ruling in the Supreme Court that went in my favor, and the case got dropped by the judge. The case got dropped.
The case was dropped. However, the system's efforts to remove this young black man from the projects were not finished. Even though he was already incarcerated, they chose to add charges that would keep him there for almost 10 years. Boosie attempted to sneak drugs into prison in 2011 while still incarcerated and was charged with more drug-related offenses. His sentence was increased to 8 years when he entered a guilty plea to these counts. The up-and-coming rapper who had been making waves in the industry was abruptly facing nearly 10 years in prison.
The fact that I was sentenced to third offense marijuana, 10 years. I was sentenced to 10 years. The system been let me down.
The most serious asterisk was yet to come in what would turn out to be one of the most widely reported murder cases in recent Louisiana history. Boosie was charged on June 17, 2010, with Terry Boyd's first-degree murder, which occurred in 2009. The prosecution attempted to portray Boosie as having engaged Mike Louding, to manage his company. The stakes could not have been greater, allegedly as part of some murder-for-hire scheme over territorial beef.
I was sentenced to 10 for third offense marijuana.
Yeah.
How you know if I'm drug addict if you never send me to rehab? I was sent straight to the pen. How am I, you know if I'm a drug addict if you never offered me
He
rehab?
was facing the death penalty if found guilty. Although they never had enough proof to charge Boosie with those crimes, the prosecution were attempting to portray him as a cold-blooded killer who may have been involved in at least 5 more deaths. Prosecutors used everything from phone records to Boosie's rap lyrics as alleged proof, turning the case into a circus. Prosecutors were going line by line through songs like 187 and Body Bag, which he had recorded around the time Terry Boyd was killed, and asserting that these weren't merely bars, but genuine admissions. On June 28, 2010, Boosie pled not guilty in a Louisiana court. His defense team pressed aggressively, claiming that Michael Louding's evidence was as unreliable as a crack house during an earthquake, and that the prosecution's whole case was based on it. The defense didn't even call witnesses since they were so sure of themselves they essentially stated that the prosecution had nothing substantial when they rested their case, as 12 jurors considered whether one of the most talented rap artists in the South would survive or die. The atmosphere in that Louisiana courtroom must have been as intense as smoke in a trap house, knowing that a conviction would not only put an end to Boosie's career, but also possibly his life. The entire hip-hop community was holding its breath. After less than 10 minutes of deliberation, a jury cleared Boosie of the murder accusation on May 11, 2012. Everyone knew what many already knew because of that hasty decision. The prosecution's case was as weak as diluted alcohol. Boosie and his people celebrated the acquittal as a huge victory, but the harm had already been done. The system had robbed years of his best years. Despite beating the murder rap, Boosie was nevertheless imprisoned for those drug offenses. After serving around 5 of his 8-year term, he was ultimately released on March 5, 2014. Good behavior and some legal wrangling by his lawyers likely led to his early release. However, the encounter had permanently altered him. The youthful, untamed rapper who entered was now a seasoned pro, who knew the true rules of the game. Boosie was still subject to the system's many restrictions and oversights after his release, because he was on parole until 2018. Despite everything that had happened to him, Boosie appeared to be more hungry than ever. Rebuilding his fan base and releasing project after project, he threw himself back into his music business as if it were his life. His mystique was shaped by the tale of his comeback, but he was never able to completely shake those old beliefs, which were like a chain around his neck. State and federal restrictions prohibiting strapping for convicted offenders would continue to resurface. The seriousness of the firearm-related allegations is increased by the fact that he was a convicted felon in 2011 due to a narcotics conviction. Since federal law forbids criminals from owning firearms, in the years that followed his release, the same plot continued to unfold. During a traffic stop in Noonan, Georgia in 2019, a deputy noticed a white Dodge Charger swerving and almost sideswiping another car, leading to Boosie's arrest. It was the same sight all over again. When the officer examined the whip after smelling the sticky yuck, he discovered narcotics and a loaded revolver. However, it was the events of May 6, 2023, in San Diego, California, that would initiate the legal drama that is currently threatening to permanently remove Boosie and his family from the streets. The rapper had come to America's finest city to perform at a club in the Gaslamp Quarter and film a music video. It would be just another ordinary business trip that would become his worst legal nightmare since he won that murder case more than 10 years ago. Federal pressure and snitching on social media. What should have been simply another day of working hard and earning money for Boosie transformed into a federal lawsuit that would have the culture talking for years. On May 6, 2023, as the sun was sinking over San Diego's Choice View neighborhood, the Red Stick rapper, 42, had great plans when he arrived in Southern California. That evening, he was scheduled to perform and film a video at the upscale Gaslamp Quarter's Phantom Lounge and nightclub. The original creator had no idea that the boys in blue were already observing everything he did and waiting for him to make a mistake. The whole issue was ironic since Boosie, who has dedicated his career to staying true to himself and his fans, was sharing his real-life experiences on social media, which is exactly what made him authentic. Court filings state that San Diego police witnessed a man later identified as Boosie in a residential backyard with a black handgun tucked into his waistband while keeping an eye on an Instagram live feed of a well-known local gang member. In the age of social media, where rappers spend their entire lives in front of their fans, Boosie's innate desire to share the truth with his fans unintentionally provided the federal government with all the resources they required to launch a significant operation. The same transparency that made him popular in the hood turned out to be the snare that he fell into. Authorities followed him to a black SUV using an aerial law enforcement unit, which is essentially a police helicopter. They absolutely went overboard with the amount of resources they used for this bust. A rapper who was only in town to make some cash and get in touch with his West Coast fan base was the target of multiple units. The outcomes were precisely what the guys had hoped for when they finally took action and conducted that traffic stop. Boosie and another cat named Billy Johnson were found in the cars.
At first it was a state case. Your lawyers came in, the state case was dropped.
The strategy.
2 loaded handguns, a Glock, and a Hellcat during the search. The discovery of those artifacts started a series of events that would shape Boosie's subsequent years. From Boosie's seat, the situation initially appeared to be under control. State allegations against him included being an unlisted owner of a registered firearm, carrying a concealed weapon in an automobile, possessing ammunition by a prohibited individual, and possessing a firearm by a felon. Megan Blanco, his attorney, had informed him that he was willing to enter a plea to the state counts in exchange for probation rather than more jail time. From a street standpoint, the plan made logical. Boosie's past legal struggles had taught him that sometimes accepting responsibility, cooperating with the system, and keeping things going is the best course of action. There was genuine hope that this most recent legal speed bump would be resolved swiftly and amicably because his supporters recognized his predicament. Then the unexpected plot twist occurred. The state charges were dropped during a court appearance in San Diego County Superior Court on June 14, 2023. Boosie appeared to have escaped another legal bullet for a split second. It must have been an amazing sense of relief. It had been another near miss that he had somehow avoided. However, that respite lasted as long as a crack house Newport. Federal officials detained Boosie outside the San Diego courthouse on a federal charge of being a felon in possession of a firearm.
They went appeal the Supreme Court ruling.
Just moments after the state charge,
And
citing federal regulations.
and they won on the Supreme Court ruling. Now it was back again.
The emotional. This development came as a different shock. Megan Blanco and Damon L. Mori, Boosie's lawyers, described the federal arrest as highly rare and claimed it went against a Justice Department rule that prohibits charging the same person twice for the same crime. They hypothesized that the federal pursuit may have been impacted by Boosie's vocal criticism of the criminal justice system in his songs and on social media. His face was etched with the emotional toll. Boosie publicly vented his annoyance, telling his people that this was harassment. The idea of perhaps serving federal time, as his 9 children watched from the sidelines, was obviously eating him alive.
Could appeal that, but that'll be 2-3 more years, and just wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
He even turned to social media to apologize to his kids, stating, "I want to take this time to apologize to my kids. I am sorry, and I love y'all forever." Boosie was first taken into custody after entering a not guilty plea to the federal charges. However, a magistrate judge granted him bail on a $50,000 bond, which was later raised to $100,000. On June 20th, 2023, due to the circumstances, he was able to travel for performances, which let him maintain some financial stability during this tumultuous time. But like a dark cloud, that federal case hung over his head. Boosie remained in legal purgatory for more than a year, never knowing when the next shoe might drop. He continued to record songs, tours, and uphold his reputation. However, those who knew him well could see that the stress was wearing him down. Every aspect of his life and career was being impacted by the uncertainty of perhaps spending decades in federal prison. Then, what appeared to be divine intervention occurred. July 12, 2024, the U.S. citing a United States v. Duarte ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which ruled that preventing nonviolent offenders from possessing firearms is unlawful under the Second Amendment. District Judge Kathy N. Benchavengo dismissed the federal weapon possession allegation. Based on this new precedence, Boosie's legal team successfully claimed that he shouldn't be denied his gun rights, because his previous convictions were for nonviolent narcotics charges. The joy was instantaneous and passionate. Outside the courtroom, Boosie was sobbing with happiness, stating, "This situation made me see who was down with me and who wasn't. God had a different plan." He even shared a video of his celebration from the lazy river at the Sicuan Casino Resort in San Diego, giving the impression that he had finally put this chapter behind him. This felt like the joyful ending that Boosie's story deserved for kiddies who had followed his journey through decades of legal challenges. This man was being vindicated by the nation's top courts after surviving the streets, escaping a murder charge, and doing his time. The federal prosecutors had other ideas and weren't going to overlook this. Even though the redemption story appeared to be finished, less than 2 weeks after the dismissal, they returned with much more vigor. July 19, 2024, the U.S. Boosie was re-indicted on 2 counts by the Office of Attorney Tara McGrath, knowingly possessing a firearm while using or addicted to a controlled substance, and possession of a handgun by a felon in interstate commerce. All firearms and ammunition implicated had to be forfeited, according to the re-indictment. Additionally, Boosie can spend up to 25 years in federal prison if found guilty on both counts.
I was celebrating, man.
And we were celebrating too early.
I was celebrating.
The jolt to the emotions was awful. Boosie was celebrating his liberation and vindication 1 minute. He was charged with even more serious offenses the next time. His social media response was unvarnished and unadulterated, displaying the rage and fury of someone who believed the system was purposefully working to ruin him.
I got a call on the beach 3 weeks later with my family. Say they just indicted you again. They added a charge, say I was a drug addict.
I think they were trying to use one of my interviews to justify that over something that you were talking about from like 10 years ago.
The inclusion of the drug-related accusation was especially shady because Boosie accused the prosecution of overreaching and questioned why it wasn't in the original indictment, referring to the procedure as a circus. The timing appeared purposefully cruel, allowing him to rejoice in his freedom only to take it away again, with far more severe possible repercussions, seemed to be intended to crush his soul at this point. Boosie Badass understood that the battle was larger than himself, his legal team, and possibly even his capacity to prevail via willpower and cunning. Regardless of appeal, court rulings, or constitutional issues, the federal government had made it clear that they were not going to let this matter go. By the summer of 2025, Boosie Badass was a man engaged in a multifaceted battle against his pride, the streets where he grew up, and the federal government. His spirit, his family, and his people had all been negatively impacted by the constant legal pressure, which had worn him down like water on stone. He had been fighting a case for almost 3 years, and each time he believed he had beaten it. It continued to change and get worse. That financial and emotional toll was getting to be too much. And the same cat that had said he would never fold was beginning to understand that knowing when to give up a fight you can't win is sometimes the best.
Wasn't gonna go to trial with it,
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna go to trial with it from the dump actually, but I feel like this the right move for me. You know, I trust in God, Vlad, I mean.
Course of action, neither his powerful lawyers nor his street advisors made the judgment that would alter everything. It came from his closest loved ones. Boosie's family helped him realize what his pride had been keeping him from. That sometimes the most gangster thing you can do is prioritize what matters most and live to fight another. These chats must have been heartbreaking for everyone concerned, Boosie said on X previously.
I thought this case was over and I was gonna get on with my life, but God don't make mistakes and I'm tired of fighting. Talked to my family and this is the right decision.
Twitter on August 4th, 2025, that he had agreed to a plea bargain in the federal firearms case. His enormous fan base and the hip-hop culture were rocked by the announcement. This was the same man who had fought the system relentlessly for decades, who had declared his innocence and his right to bear arms, and who had defeated a murder accusation against all odds. He was now abandoning the fight. However, this was not surrender to those who truly knew him. It was a matter of strategic survival.
Stop asking for a fucking pardon. You taking your faith out. You taking your faith out of God. You ask God to put faith in a man.
Boosie formally entered a guilty plea to 1 count of felon.
Stop asking a man. Stop asking people. So, you know, I trust in God, man. I mean, my prize ain't. I don't have no bad prize. I mean,
in possession of a handgun before a federal judge in San Diego on August 26, 2025. Boosie's fiancée and family members were present to support him during what may have been one of the most trying times of his life.
Now Hatch, known as Boosie to his fans, now awaits sentencing. He's a father of 9 kids. His fiancée was with him in court today. So some background on this.
And the courtroom scene was filled with emotion. Every word he said to reporters outside the courthouse conveyed the gravity of his choice.
So I just want to get it over with, you know. Accept my guilty plea, I'm ready to get over it.
Anything you want to say to your fans?
Just say a prayer for him. I just need.
He gave a straightforward and vulnerable response when the media asked him what he most needed from his followers.
Just say a prayer for him. I just need prayer. I don't need nothing else. Yeah.
The maximum penalty for the charge is 15 years in federal prison. However, as part of the plea deal, federal prosecutors agreed to remove the second firearm allegation, which was tied to drug usage, and suggest a 2-year prison sentence. Prosecutors decided not to pursue any financial penalties, noting poor financial prospects, and the agreement also recommends 3 years of supervised release after any jail sentence. The plea deal specifics made clear that the offense that gave rise to federal jurisdiction was interstate. Federal prosecutors revealed that on the day of his arrest, Boosie had bought the Glock and Hellcat handguns in Georgia and flown them to San Diego on a Delta Airlines flight. The interstate commerce component, which made it a federal offense, rather than a state one.
In the plea deal, that they throwing that out.
Okay, they threw that out.
And Hatch currently lives in Atlanta. Now he faces a maximum of 15 years behind bars. His defense attorney did not disclose any parts of the plea agreement or any details about it, but the judge made it very clear today, regardless of what's in that plea agreement, it is the sentencing judge who will have the final say.
Was met by this particular detail. The human cost of this entire ordeal, however, cannot be quantified in terms of years or money. Despite all the legal jargon and plea bargaining, Megan Blanco, Boosie's lawyer, highlighted the human cost while voicing cautious hope regarding the sentencing decision.
And now it's my job to make sure the court understands the scope of the case and what the case was really about, and more importantly, all of the amazing things that Mr. Hatch has done for the community, continues to do, and the amazing things that he will do going forward.
As she told reporters, "I am optimistic for Mr. Hatch. He wanted nothing more than to accept responsibility and put this behind him." She emphasized Boosie's philanthropic activities in the community. This event is made much more tragic by the sentencing's timeliness. Just a few days after Boosie's birthday, on November 21st, 2025, the sentencing hearing is set to take place, during what should be a time of joy. The 43-year-old father of 9 will find out his fate.
I'm gonna be at every show, of course. I mean,
instead, he may have to spend his golden years behind bars in a federal prison.
that ain't how I go in Fed court. Once you take a plea, your sentencing ain't till 2-3 months after that. So
Boosie has been working hard and performing, while free on his $100,000 bond in spite of all the uncertainty. He promised his followers, "I'm going to be at every show." Of course, while revealing the chronology of the federal court proceedings, what true street soldiers are made of is the tenacity with which he has endured this hardship. He has continued to promote his music and keep up his performing schedule despite the prospect of spending years in the jail.
Alive on top 5.
His dedication to his art, even at the most difficult times, is demonstrated by the release of his album,
I hope they send you somewhere where they mistreat Boosie.
Words of a Real One, on August 1st, 2025, only days before his guilty plea.
So God have to push you where you gonna serve him at?
But not everyone in the hip-hop scene has been supportive during this trying time. The most outspoken critic has been Charleston White, a divisive individual who has taken advantage of Boosie's legal issues to pursue influence and show outright disdain.
To the judge to give me credit for my anger monitor. But it's up to God to get to that judge, man. You know, I mean, I'm ready for whatever, Vlad. Like I'm built like this, Vlad. Like I told you, God want me free, gonna keep me free.
The remark, greatest alive, on top 5, was directed at Boosie's assertion that he was one of the greatest rappers of all time.
Don't send my ass to jail. That'd be calm. That's all that be.
Well, I mean, you've done it before. I'm being honest.
Right.
This is not me in front of the camera. I've never seen a gun on the coffee table.
Charleston White publicly expressed hope that Boosie would die in jail, illustrating the personal animosity that has grown between these two individuals. White's commentary continued, displaying a level of cruelty that even cats accustomed to his provocative antics were shocked by. So God have to push you where you're going to serve him at in jail.
Yeah, this is the first time I've ever had a judge who I would say is fair. Our judges always stuck it to me.
Do you think it's because this judge is in California as opposed to Louisiana? Because you've always had Louisiana judges, right?
Yeah.
However, there have been innumerable voices of love and compassion for Boosie's predicament for every hateful one. Many in the hip-hop scene have hailed his decision to accept the plea deal as a mature, calculated action that prioritizes his family's long-term survival over his own ego and street pride. Even if his future is uncertain, the man has found peace with his choice, as evidenced by the philosophical acceptance in his voice during recent interviews. The entire hip-hop community is holding its breath as November 21st, 2025 draws near, eager to find out what will happen to one of its most resilient and genuine voices.